Okay, how'd it go with the homework, everyone? Should I interpret that silence as great? Okay, good. Let's look at a few things here. Let's check in with the online people first to see where they're at. Do some of these and then some of them in the next class. So everyone understands there's two streams for 184 every day, right? Because there's this class and then there's another section that starts at 7:30 or something, right? And so I try to cover both things, but you'll see that they're, and I'm labeling them now. I'll say 184 4:30, 184 7:30, right? Or 4:30. Okay.
Hey everyone, Michael Golden here. This week's lesson has definitely got me hooked because I've always wanted to learn about motion animation and how it works. From watching the videos, it shows a lot of what people do for advertisement and such, but what I really want to know is how important is motion animation when it comes to video games.
So, thank you, Michael. First things, in OBS, if you're seeing audio here and audio there, go ahead and turn one of them down. That's why he sounds all robot-y, because phase cancellation. So just turn one of those down. And then something's going on with your camera. Either there isn't a camera or we can't see it. So all the stuff we're learning here, all the keyframing and everything like this, how to make something move, this all directly translates to animating wherever. Animating in an app, animating in a movie, animating in a video game. All the keyframe structure and how things tween in between frames, that's the same. That's not even particularly technological, right? The idea of just setting these points and interpolating in between those points, that's totally the same. So this is Art 184. Everybody in the program also needs to take Art 200, right? Art 200 is animation and interactivity. And in that class, we apply this specifically to making a couple video games. And so we use the software called Unity. But in order to make a 2D game, you would be doing a lot of the animation in After Effects and then exporting it to Unity to do 2D sprite-like animation. And so most of what we're doing here is totally applicable to video games. That's Michael. Here's Zach.
Hi guys, my question was on After Effects.
His last name is Friday? Zach Friday?
Pretty cool last name.
I know. This is like, is that like his stage name? I don't know. Zach, let us know next week.
Hi guys, my question was on After Effects. I seem to be able to either get the black box entirely, or I get the black box I can't get it to transition, right? It slides a tiny bit there, but I can't get it to do what it's supposed to be doing here.
I think he means this right here.
Thank you.
So in that part of the assignment, we made a separate. Did I have you guys make a solid or an adjustment layer? Adjustment layer? Okay. So it should just be the position on the adjustment layer. Let's see here. So first of all, adjustment layer. Who can explain what an adjustment layer is? Not Kayla. Someone else. Any takers? I'll give you a hint. It's the same as it is in Photoshop. So what does an adjustment layer do in Photoshop? Nora?
An adjustment layer can kind of change things without being destructive to the actual layer underneath it. It's kind of like an overlay that you can like change some stuff around.
Exactly, right? So I would write this down. It's a non-destructive way of, the non-destructive part isn't the key here. On an adjustment layer, you have only effects. And the effects apply to all the stuff below the adjustment layer. So yeah, it's like an overlay, right? Like an overhead projector overlay, but the thing that it does, the visual thing it changes, could be any effect, right? And so, for instance here, I'll go ahead and make, there we go. There's a white box, okay? And then I've got an adjustment layer. How do I make an adjustment layer? How do I make any layer? I can go up to the layer menu and say new, and they're all right there. Or you can just right click in empty space and say new adjustment layer. And then you can't put stuff on an adjustment layer. There's no shapes or pictures. It's just the effect on the layer. And so, for instance, I'll use a hue saturation. And let's go ahead and let's make it slightly different. Here, we'll make it that color. So not white, we'll make it a color. Okay, so here the adjustment layer has a hue control on it. Adjusting the hue changes the color or something, right? And so here's the actual shape, color. It's a red square. But when I put this hue saturation over top of it, it changes it to green. If I were to take this and Control-C, Control-V, put one on top, and move it a little bit, right? And so here, this is the red one. And this is the one that's been changed from red to green, because it is below the adjustment layer. And there could be any effect on this, and you could have multiple effects on something. So I think this will work. Let me try it once. There we go. So now I've got hue saturation and a blur on the adjustment layer. And so since this is below that, it gets blurred, right? And color changed. Whereas this one right here doesn't have either of those effects applied. And this goes for anything I would put below that on the adjustment layer. So for instance, I could even bring this image sequence down. And now that is also getting blurred. And the hue is also being shifted. Does that make sense? Right? So if you're ever in a situation where you find yourself applying the same effect to multiple layers, you should stop yourself and solve it this way instead. Because if you have to go back and make any adjustments, you would have to go back and adjust the effect on each layer. Whereas if you use an adjustment layer, you just go change the adjustment layer and it changes everything below. Make sense? Cool. As to why Zach Fridays is not animating, it looks like Zach may have been trying to move it here. Let's see. So maybe go into the move tool, Zach, V, to move it, or you can also, you don't always have to drag. One of the other options here is just manually typing in the number where you'd want this to be. And so if I know I need to go at the bottom, I could just say that at this point it needs to be at 2000, set a keyframe, and then over here it needs to be at 0, right? Or let's say we want to go the whole way up, negative 500. So now it would animate the whole way up there. But I can only see part of your screen, Zach, so try manually typing in the number. Here's Christine.
So, going back to free grade sky, I have a question about like the texture environment. Like this one is really not the best quality, but is there like a free to use website if you don't have like a picture yourself? Is there like a free to use website where you can find images and use it as like the sphere environment, I guess? Because, yeah, that'd be nice to know.
So that image came from I'm streaming, right? Yeah. Okay, now what I would write down is Polyhaven. This is a great website. Gentleman maintains. Free to use, open source donations for textures, and what we use, that the thing that would go around the sky, those are referred to as HDRIs. What I would write down, high dynamic range images, HDRI. Right, that was the image that went the whole way around. Right, we ended up changing it out and using a gradient later on because that one, I just wasn't feeling that one. It wasn't great for what we were doing there. But high dynamic range images, those are the ones. In this case, the dynamic range is not the number of pixels, it is the amount of brightness. There's a big distance between the darkest darks and the brightest brights. And that works really well for reflections in computer graphics. And so on here, if you go to HDRIs, the reason, Christine, that I gave you guys that one was to download a little bit smoother. And so for instance, here's one over here. What resolution do we render our movies at? And what's the name for that? You're right, Frank. You got the numbers exactly right. Everyone else had that memorized too, right? High definition. High definition. High definition. HD, right? If you look at these images here, our download options, right? So 1920 by 1080, right? When you go up from there, we're at 4K, right? So 1920 across, that's slightly less than 2000, right? 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 24,000, right? And so if you can grab a higher resolution one here, let's just see how big this is. Am I downloading it? I don't think so. Yeah. So the 24K one is 600 megabytes for one image, right? So that's a ginormous image, right? So yeah, I gave you guys the one that was slightly less. I think I posted a 4K version, and you can see that's only 20 megabytes, right? And so yeah, I knew that wasn't the strongest resolution, right? Because we render 1920 by 1080, right? But that image gets wrapped around our whole scene. And so you don't see the whole scene at one time. You just see part of it. And so you're seeing less than 4K, right? So what I'm saying is that the images that go around, the HDRI images, bigger is better, but in order to download faster, I gave you guys a slightly smaller one, right? We ended up using the gradient, which looked better anyway, but this would be the place to go, and we'll use it again later on. And so there's a bunch of stuff here. So there's also textures to put on different materials. You can load these onto materials. All sorts of stuff here. And then I haven't really used the models. Once we get Cinema 4D 24 installed, we'll be able to use a lot of the stuff that's in the asset browser there, and maybe some of this. So Polyhaven, that's what I'd write down. If you just Google Polyhaven, it'll take you right there first, and then all of these things are usable, although you kind of need to know how to use them. They're not designed for Cinema 4D or any other program. They're kind of designed to be open so that you could use them in whatever program that it is that you use, but you need to know where to implement them, where to put them. Sound good? So Polyhaven. Good question, Christine. Adrian?
Hello, everyone. My question has to do with the assignments that was given, which is called the Introduction to Motion Graphics. When it says here that I had to post something on Slack, I was kind of concerned because I'm still not 100% on Slack. So when you say type, where to type, I don't really know where exactly. I don't know if it's going to be in my messages or in this channel, but yeah, I could really use some help with that. Thank you.
Okay, Adrian. So you need to be in the channel for this class. And so it looks like, yeah. And so over here, right now you are only in the general channel, which is just like everybody's in that channel by default, like all, because you guys understand there's other classes on Slack as well that are in their own channels talking about other stuff. And so when I log into Slack on the computer, I always have to reload. Here we go. So Adrian, you need to come over here under channels, and the plus, you can click that to browse channels, and then you need to add the 184 channel. Everybody in here, I think, has already done this, right? You're all good on this part of it. Yes? Okay, good. All right, so that's what you need to do, Adrian. One more. Here's Max.
Howdy, everyone. I noticed that in Casey Farina's videos for introduction to
Farina.
topography in motion, in Adobe After Effects, he has a alignment window. When I had After Effects open, I didn't have this alignment window, so is there a way I can open that alignment window so I can use it to align objects and such?
Good question, Max. So, I'm working on stuff for this class and other classes and my own stuff, and so sometimes, I'm recording a tutorial, but I have things set up differently. Under Window, Workspace, there's a bunch of options here. Usually in After Effects, I'm either in default or standard here, which kind of looks like this. But under Window, all of the possibilities are right here. Right? Getting it? There we go. All of these right here. There. And so, right, the alignment is right here. Align. That opens this up down here. this is like any other Adobe program, and so all of these are tabs that can be repositioned. So if you need to put this over here, and then for instance, if I made, I think with the alignment window here, right, this is very much like Illustrator. Okay, so it is functioning on the layer there. So for instance, you want to make sure you get your anchor point straightened out beforehand. There's one circle. Let's draw another circle. Let's center this anchor point. There we go. And so if I get this and this selected, I want to align them horizontally. There we go. Everybody recognize this from Illustrator? All these icons here? This functions, as far as I know, exactly the same as it does in Illustrator. Right? So either aligning or distributing stuff. Cool. Ron. Whoa. Okay.
Working on the typography bounce part of the project for this week, and I had an odd issue where when I separated the bounce text into bounce outlines to edit it so that I can make the squash text, for some reason, as you can see here, when I changed it, it changed the bouncing animation I had to an arc. So go ahead and play that once. So it bounces an arc first for some reason, and I'm trying to figure that out. So if you guys can help me with that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. Good question, Ron. It would be good to see your graph editor there. Let's set a position keyframe. And then another position keyframe. And then a third one. Just moving. Oh, another shortcut that I'm not sure I've talked about here. When I'm scrubbing the timeline, if you hold down Shift, it will snap to where the keyframes are. And so this is handy, for sure. Otherwise, I come over here, and I want to replace this keyframe, like give it a different value. And so I'll come over here, and then I'll move. Okay, good. Now let me move this. Now, I actually wasn't on it. And so if you look now, I've got two keyframes like one frame apart, right? And so that can happen a bunch, which is usually not what you want. And so holding down Shift while you're scrubbing allows you to very easily snap to where the keyframes are, and that makes using this a lot easier. I don't think I told you guys that one before. So Shift to snap. This happens a lot because when you go to separate dimensions, it changes the tweening. Okay, so you can see here that I'm getting some easing happening, right? Because how can you tell there's any easing? Because there's what? Curve. Curve. Who said curve? Adam? Yeah. Remember, straight line is going to be no easing. Curve means that there's going to be some kind of ease, some sort of acceleration or deceleration, right? Depending on which direction it goes. So here, if I go ahead and separate dimensions, watch the graph. You see that this one down here, this has changed a bunch. And so it changes the default tweening when you separate dimensions. And so you have to have it looked like you had the dope sheet editor open, Ron, which is this view. It's probably better to have the graph editor open so you can see exactly what's happening with your keyframes in the graph editor. so that you can see what happened with the tweening being adjusted. Cool. All right, good. I'll do the other questions in the evening class, so you can watch that stream and see that there. Sound good? Okay. Did anyone have any particular problems with the typography homework? Frank.
So I have a question. Like, so I was working on the Apple computer over here, and I have a Windows at home, and when I place the file on the Mac, and when I tried opening it, the font wouldn't let me change it. It would replace it with a different font set on the Mac. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the fonts, when you install a font, it's just for that computer. Okay. So I gave you guys that whole zip file of fonts. You can go back and download it again whenever you need it. But yeah, you have to install the font wherever you're going to use it. So none of the fonts I gave you guys are automatically installed on any of these machines. And so where did you start working on the project?
At home.
At home. So you installed it on your home computer, then you brought it here. And so before you open it in After Effects, you would want to install the font on the school computer, which unfortunately won't stick. You would need to do that again, like once you logged out and logged back in. It's just the way it is. And then, but at home, it'll stay, right? It'll stay there. Good question. Yeah, you gotta, the fonts are not, yeah. Good. Jelly.
I went on Slack last night and I posted about how I didn't know how to make the fade portion of the project to fade out so I can move on to the next portion of it. And I remember you replying to me about it, but it didn't make sense to me what you said.
What did I say? Let's see. I forgot what I said. Did I already close the Slack window? Jeez. Nope, it's over here.
You passed it.
I did?
Yeah. Right there, the yellow.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So about the fading and the different, there we go. There we go. Okay, so from the homework, different ways to fade things in and out depending on what it is you want to do. So you were looking at the opacity level and it wasn't changing, right? Let's just make this 5 seconds. There we go. So the most direct way to fade anything is to keyframe opacity. Right, so if you just set a keyframe, and what's the shortcut for opacity? T. Right? So that always works. So no matter what, that's fine. So let's do that here. Our other option is to use the fade in / out effects. So that comes from the effects menu and fades something in and out, usually based on frames, amount of time in frames by default, right? So how long do you want the fade to be? And then the other option here is fade out letters or words, and that's also in the effect menu. Everybody got this part? Okay. So you would want to use different things depending on different options, right? So here's fade T. I want this to fade out. And so I'm going to go ahead and hit T. There's 100. Here is it at 0. I pressed the stopwatch beforehand so that I got keyframes. And now this fades out. That's not news to anybody. Everybody understood that, right? Good. Now, if that works, why would you ever want to do it differently? If I change the length of the layer, so here or at the beginning, or if I move those things, for instance, I move this way, you see that I've moved the layer, but now the keyframes stay put. So this, how do I fix this? Well, I could grab the keyframes and move them over here. And now I'm back to OK. But you can see how this can be a problem, right? If I was needing to adjust the length of this often, right, as far as the edit or whatever, then doing it this way would not be great. Or if I had 100 layers like this, and I needed to adjust the length, and I did it this way, then I would need to go back and move the keyframes for all of them. That's no good, right? So this is fine when you just have one layer, you need to brute force it, it's fine. Using the effect, so I'm going to go ahead and delete those and get rid of the keyframing. There we go. If I go ahead and over to effects somewhere, here you go, effects, fade, right? And so we'll use the frames. Fade in and out frames. I'm going to make sure that my layer is selected, and I'll double click. And here it says it's going to take 15 frames to fade in and fade out. And if I scrub the timeline here, this is an effect that calculates this based on the in and out points of the layer. This is the out point, right? For those of you who have done some Premiere editing, that's how you refer to when the layer starts and when the layer ends, the in and the out point. And so now if I were to move these, you see that the fade moves with the changing of the layer length. So this would be way better if you had a whole bunch of layers that you definitely wanted to fade in and out, but you wanted to make more easily make adjustments to having them fade in. But if you look, this does not change the value that you see on the transform properties. So I think this is what you were seeing. Yes? No?
Well, I don't remember.
Okay.
Looking at it again to know.
Okay, yeah, I think this is what was going on, because you see that you still get fading, but you're not the transform property will not change. It stays put at 100, because we haven't keyframed it, we just applied this effect. Make sense? Okay, and then the third way, if we get rid of this effect, and we have the options that we used before, fade up characters or fade up words. We'll use characters here because we just have one word. And so I'll select this and double click, fade up characters. And here, so there's a lot of stuff in the effects and presets menu. Some of it is a straight up effect. Some of it, like these behaviors, did you notice that when I made that, there were actually two things over here, right? And this one, again, is a combination of things. And some of them, it matters where the playhead is when you make the effect. So watch what happens. You have to select it, double click. And now, you see it made 2 keyframes. What's the shortcut for seeing keyframes? I don't know where the keyframes are. I don't know what I keyframed. I need to see the keyframes. Frank? U. Everyone's got that one memorized, right? So if I hit U, I can see exactly what's keyframed. And it made this fade in letters starting right where my playhead was. If I were to go back and the playhead was over here, I apply this. You see that it's blank, 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 blank. Now it starts to fade in, but the layer is already over at that point, right? And so I would need to extend my layer in order to see all of these fade in, or if I pressed U, then I would need to come in here and move this keyframe, and that's the point at which these letters start to fade in. So the things that are labeled, yeah, a lot of these things here, but from an artistic standpoint, you only want to be using fade up characters, maybe fade up words. There's a lot of garbage over here, all right? As far as like a bunch of, if I were to not search for fade, and I just go to text, or sorry, type, yeah, animation presets, text, animate in, right? Twirl in each letter. This is not a good decision, right? Like, not great. So really, you only need to worry about fade in letters, fade in words. If you find yourself picking something else over here, you should ask yourself, self, is this really the best artistic decision to be making here? Because no, it's not.
You should just leave them spinning, like the letters, and they don't even read the word.
Oh, just spinning all the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've received projects like that. Right? That's not a good idea. Like I said, anytime there's type on screen, it's there to be read, right? Cool. Okay, so I'll download some of the stuff here. We'll look at it a little bit later, but how to go doing your own stuff for bounce and big, small, and ease. Like bounce, you were totally on your own. Everybody was okay to bounce? Yeah? Okay. We'll look at some of the bounce results there. Awesome. Okay. Let's move on a little bit. Everybody feel like they have a good good framework for working with typography here, right? Use the fonts I gave you, right? Choose from that list. Be conservative in both font choice and animating said font, right? And let the image making do the talking, not the font choice and or font animation. Cool. All right, so we're going to move on to a deeper dive into some of the principles of animation. Let's go ahead and look at this. How about the motion graphics assignment? What did you guys think of those videos?
It was motivational.
Cool, that's good.
Inspiring. I think like when I was doing the art history video, it was pretty nice. Like rubber hose cartoons and the computer 3D animation.
Uh-huh.
It was pretty nice.
What kind of work did you guys like there? So as we go through this, we'll actually do some stuff. We'll do a couple assignments like this, where I watch this stuff and just write a little blurb about it. I'm big on the creativity video, as far as creativity being this reprocessing of a lot of what you already seen. And so feeding your brain good stuff so that that's what you're using as your foundation. And yeah, sort of the really, really quick intro to animation. So how many of you guys knew about Beeple before this? Frank, you had heard of him?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so just to fill you in on what has happened. All right, so public service announcement first. Mike, what's his name? Mike Winkleman. Okay, I would write that one down, right? But if you Google Beeple, everything comes up. He's been doing this for a long time, right? Working on it every day. I'm not sure how much of you guys went through and looked through this, but he has them all archived online, which is astoundingly transparent. Because obviously he's really good now, right? And then also he's really crass, okay? So if you're offended by really crass political statements, be aware that that's in his wheelhouse. But he left it all up here, right? So he's got the stuff back from when he was just drawing every day, which not even, really great drawings up until the stuff he's doing now, which, really amazing, sort of very detailed renders, right? That he's doing all the time. And so just the fact that he stuck with it, first of all, but then also he's sort of very, very, very transparent about it. And so he's been doing this for, however many years this is, quite a few. And then, how many of you guys know what an NFT is? You guys heard this in the news? Frank, you've heard it?
Yeah, I heard it. I just don't know what it is. I forgot what it was.
Non-fungible token. I'd write that one down. So, how many of you guys know what Bitcoin is? You guys heard of Bitcoin, right? So, what's the word that describes Bitcoin? Cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, right? So I'm not going to sort of try to explain all that. Anyways, it's crypto money. Now an NFT is essentially crypto art. Oh, did that go off? I bumped it again. Give it a second. Right, so it's crypto art. And this, literally in the last less than a year. I mean, it's been around longer, but it's really, really taken off in the last year. And the people who are really high-profile motion graphics artists sort of are on the ground floor of all of that. And so people released this as an NFT, right? So it's a piece of digital art that you can prove you own. Okay, prove it in the same way you can prove that you possess Bitcoin. It's kind of an abstract concept, but that's what it is. Anyways, Mike was one of the most popular people doing this, and then he had a really, really popular series of NFTs he released in December, and then he released another in, when was this? Like March. And this one was managed by Christie's. So Christie's is the art auction house for high-end fine art, like the highest end, the most expensive. And this particular JPEG, it's like a collage of, what is it, the first 5,000 every day? So you can see it's all of them. You know, this is just on the web. It's not the real one's higher resolution, right? Anyways, this was auctioned for $69 million. So this, I don't know how that breaks down for these type of things as far as what the artist ends up with, but obviously that's a lot, right? Maybe an inflated price, but this is like this whole new, sort of frontier of doing this kind of work that has opened up literally like in the last year and a half. That people are now making a living, not working for clients, but releasing these for cryptocurrency and then converting cryptocurrency into real money. So this is something, as someone who's aspiring to do digital art, that I would just pay attention to and keep on your radar, right? That this is a thing that's happening, right? A lot of other people have made also large sums here, sort of selling digital art directly this way, because this was the one thing that separated digital art from paintings, right? If you make a painting, you put it up in a gallery, you sell it to someone, they pick the painting off the wall, they take it home. The ownership is like anything else. It's concrete, it's clear. Everybody understands how that works. But now with NFTs, you can prove that you own this digital file, and even though its bits could be replicated, you're still the owner of record for that, in this case, JPEG or PNG or MP4 or whatever. Now, that's definitely like a much more abstract concept of ownership than here's the painting on my wall, but that's where we're at for this kind of thing. And so all the videos you watched of people were way before this happened. Like I think just last week, he won like GQ Artist of the Year. So yeah, his fame is skyrocketed after this kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to say about Mike Wickelman, but you can't say he doesn't work hard, right? That's kind of indisputable. Like 5,000 days of doing it every day. But so this is a whole thing. If you Google NFTs, or if you look at the New York Times NFTs, there's many, many, many articles about all of this stuff, right? Now, I'm not saying I'm for this or against it or whatever. I am just merely bringing it to your attention. Cool? Yes, Frank.
So, I'm going to ask you a question, Mr. Farina.
Yes.
How long do you think this will last, or will it last forever? NFTs, in your opinion?
Well, when it comes to betting on something to last forever, I would bet against that, in any instance. But
well, as long as computers are still...
I don't know. Seriously, I don't know, man. Like, this is like, even other speculative things are a little bit older than this. Like, Bitcoin is way older than this, right? So, I don't know. All of the buying and selling that's happening with these things is happening in cryptocurrency, right? So when people sell these, they're selling them for Ethereum, and then in order to live, transferring Ethereum to US dollars or whatever your local currency is, and exchanging it and living off of that. So, I mean, things have cooled off a little bit since March, but I mean, blockchain stuff seems to be pretty solid. I am not a licensed financial advisor, so anything I say, like this is being recorded, so do not take any of my advice. This is not even advice. It's merely discussion. So I don't know, Frank. I really don't. I mean, all of the blockchain stuff seems to be dependent on the fact that it's like very secure digitally, and I mean, I'm not a computer security expert. As long as that holds up, it seems like this has some sort of staying power, at least temporarily. So,
Alright.
you know.
Thank you. I value your wisdom.
You can value it, but just don't take. This is not financial advice of any kind. Cool. So in addition to doing all this work every day, Mike also makes his own short films. So this was part of one of the videos, right? I think? Yeah. Yeah, let's watch this one. I'm gonna pause this.